The war had lasted too long. For 7 endless years, the great Turvax Dominion fought across the stars, believing no one could defeat them. They had conquered dozens of worlds and ruled with pride, but pride was the first thing to fall. Now their queen, Ravari, stood inside the shattered command hall of her palace on Varnus Prime, watching through the cracked glass as enemy ships filled the sky. Each one glowed red like a wound in the heavens. Explosions painted the clouds orange. The walls trembled with every hit from orbital cannons. Her once golden throne room was filled with smoke and sparks. Broken banners lay on the floor, trampled by soldiers rushing to defend what was left. Ravari's tall crown was gone. She had left it behind when the last wall fell. She wore only simple armor now, blackened by dust and battle. A messenger ran in, his uniform torn, face pale. "My queen, the western towers have fallen. The shield generators are gone. The enemy will reach the inner gate soon." Ravari didn't move. Her deep violet eyes stayed fixed on the storm outside. "How many ships remain?" 15, my queen, maybe fewer." Her heart sank. Only days ago she had commanded thousands. Now she could count her defenders on her fingers. She turned to her generals. There were only 3 left, old, tired faces, each bearing the guilt of defeat. "Is there no path left?" she asked softly. One general bowed his head. "If we surrender, the coalition may spare some of us." Ravari looked at him sharply. "Spare us? After what we did to them? After the worlds we burned?" Her voice broke slightly, but she held her posture. "No, they will not spare us. They will wipe Turvax from history." The others said nothing. The truth was too heavy. A loud tremor shook the hall. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere above, the palace roof collapsed, sending beams crashing down. The soldiers near the door shouted and ran to brace the falling structure. Ravari closed her eyes for a moment. So this is how it ends, she thought. The mighty Turvax brought to dust by their own arrogance. Her people had believed they were destined to rule the galaxy. They saw other species as lesser, weak, unworthy of command. She had believed it too, once. But now, surrounded by ruin, she finally saw how wrong they had been. She stepped toward the old comm station at the center of the room. The screen flickered weakly, still half working. Her aides looked confused. "My queen," one said, "we have lost communication with all outer systems. What are you doing?" Ravari didn't answer at first. Her fingers trembled slightly as she typed on the console, rerouting power from every remaining generator. The screen came alive again, showing an empty field of stars. She pressed a button, activating an ancient universal broadcast channel, one used long ago before the wars. It was an open frequency, one that could reach beyond their empire, beyond known space. "My queen," the aide asked again. Ravari took a long breath. "If our allies have fallen silent, perhaps someone else will hear. But who, my queen? No one in this galaxy would come to our aid." Her lips curved into a faint, bitter smile. "Then I will speak to those beyond it." She leaned close to the microphone. Her voice, though tired, carried the weight of command and sorrow. "This is Queen Ravari of the Turvax Dominion. Our homeworld, Varnus Prime, is under attack. The enemy fleets surround us. Our people are dying. To any who can hear this message, we seek aid. I do not ask for conquest or revenge, only mercy. If there is anyone at all who still believes in honor among the stars, please hear me." When she finished, the hall was silent except for the distant rumble of explosions. Her aide whispered, "My queen, you sent that message into open space. You don't even know who might receive it." "I know," she said quietly, "but doing nothing means death. Perhaps the universe has not forgotten compassion." The console flickered once more, then dimmed, power running low. The message would repeat on a loop until the system failed. Outside, the battle raged on. The coalition fleets, made up of dozens of alien races the Turvax once ruled, had come for vengeance. They fired without pause, turning the once beautiful Turvax capital into a field of fire. The palace spires fell one by one, each crash echoing across the planet. In the command room, Ravari watched the tactical display as her cities turned red. Her people fought bravely, but bravery could not match numbers. The Dominion's glory had become a grave. One of her guards, a young soldier named Narek, knelt beside her. His armor was scorched, his breathing rough. "My queen," he said, "if we fall, I will stand with you until the end." Ravari placed a hand on his shoulder. "You already have, Narek, you all have." Another explosion shook the ground. The lights went out completely. Emergency lamps flickered to life, casting everything in red. From the balcony above, the stars were burning, entire ships falling through the atmosphere like meteors. Hrivari could see the enemy flagship, a massive triangular vessel lowering its guns toward the surface. The next blast would end it all. And yet, she did not flee. She stood tall, her armor gleaming faintly in the dim light. Her people needed to see their queen unbroken. Even in ruin, she could give them hope. Far beyond Varnus Prime, her message traveled through the void. Across forgotten systems and silent worlds, it echoed faintly, a desperate voice calling from the edge of extinction. It reached communication relays abandoned long ago. It bounced off asteroid colonies, through ion storms, across sectors untouched by war. And somewhere in a quiet corner of another star system, the signal found its way to an unexpected place, a small human outpost orbiting Mars. Inside the listening station, the crew sat in boredom. It was a normal day, scanning signals, checking trade frequencies, and monitoring navigation beacons. Nothing ever happened there, then the console beeped. "Commander Leon," the operator said, "we're receiving a strange distress signal. Non-human origin." The commander, a tall man with calm eyes and a tired uniform, turned in his chair. "Play it." The room filled with static. Then came a voice, oddly soft, trembling but clear. "To any who can hear this message, we seek aid. Please hear me." The words repeated, fading in and out through interference. The crew exchanged glances. They could tell from the tone. This was not a trap, not a false broadcast. It was real fear. Leon frowned. "Origin?" The operator tapped his screen. "Coordinates place it near the Turvax border. Deep in Coalition space, that's dangerous territory." Leon leaned closer. "Turvax? The same Dominion that banned human ships a decade ago?" "Yes, sir." "That's them." He sat back in silence. Everyone knew the Turvax reputation. They were powerful once, proud and cruel. Humanity had suffered under their rule before the wars broke out. No one in their right mind would help them now. And yet, Leon couldn't ignore the sound of that voice. There was something in it, something raw, genuine. Not the command of a queen, but the plea of a person. He stood. "Record that signal. Send it to command for analysis." The operator hesitated. "Commander, should we reply?" Leon looked out the window at the red planet below. He didn't answer right away. "No," he said finally. "Not yet. Let's see if anyone else does." Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that this moment mattered, that history had just whispered in his ear. Back on Varnus Prime, hours passed. The palace shook again and again. The sky was filled with flames and the defenders grew fewer. Hrivari stood alone in the command hall now. Her advisors were gone, either dead or scattered. Only a few soldiers remained, guarding the last gate. She walked to the window, watching the enemy forces descend. Her people's great cities burned like stars falling into darkness. She whispered to herself, "If this is our end, then let it be known we did not beg for power, only for mercy." Somewhere far away, her message continued to echo, crossing light years, searching for someone who still believed in compassion among the stars. She didn't know it yet, but the signal had already been heard. And soon humanity would answer. Commander Leon couldn't sleep that night. The signal kept echoing in his mind, that single voice from across the stars, filled with desperation and sorrow. He sat in the dim control room of the Mars relay station, a small outpost circling the red planet. The view from the window showed the surface below, quiet and lifeless, while above, the endless dark of space waited. He replayed the message again, listening carefully. "This is Queen Hrivari of the Turvax Dominion. Our homeworld, Varnus Prime, is under attack. Our people are dying. We seek aid." The sound of her voice was weak, filled with exhaustion and fear, yet there was dignity in it too. Leon leaned back in his chair and whispered, "The Turvax Queen herself." It was almost impossible to believe. The Turvax had once been humanity's greatest oppressors. Long before Leon's time, their empire ruled over dozens of species, including humans. Humanity had been forced into mining, labor, and dangerous exploration zones. When the Great Wars began, humans had broken free, but at a terrible cost. Now, after years of silence, the proud alien ruler of that empire was begging for help. The next morning, the Earth Defense Council received the report. Leon stood before a large holographic screen, his signal connection blinking. On the other end sat 3 high-ranking officers and 1 gray-haired diplomat. Admiral Ronan, a broad-shouldered man with a scar down his cheek, was the first to speak. "Commander Leon, you're certain this signal is authentic?" "Yes, Admiral," Leon said firmly. The encryption, voice pattern, and origin all match Turvak's transmission codes. The message has been repeating for at least 12 hours. Another council member, Ambassador Kira, frowned. "And you're suggesting we help them?" Leon hesitated. "I'm saying we should at least respond. Their world is surrounded. Millions could die." Admiral Ronan leaned closer to the camera. "Commander, perhaps you've forgotten what they did to us. The Turvaks enslaved our ancestors. They saw humans as insects. And now you want to risk lives for them?" Leon stayed calm, though his jaw tightened.
"Sir, I haven't forgotten."
"But this isn't about revenge. It's about who we are now. They once showed no mercy. That doesn't mean we have to do the same." The room fell silent. After a long pause, Ambassador Kira sighed. "Even if we wanted to, sending aid that far would take time. Coalition fleets control the region. Any human ship entering Turvak space could be destroyed before it even reaches orbit." "I know the risks," Leon said. "But if we ignore them, we let an entire world burn." Ronan shook his head. "You are a soldier, Commander. You follow orders. Do not act without authorization." The signal ended. The hologram faded, leaving Leon alone in the quiet control room once again. He stood there for a while, staring out at the stars. He had followed orders his entire life, but for the first time, those orders didn't feel right. That evening he met with his crew, the small team who ran the Mars outpost. There were only 12 of them, each loyal and skilled, but more importantly, they trusted Leon completely. He looked around the room. "You all heard the signal," he began. "Earth Command has decided to ignore it." One of the engineers, Mira, frowned. "Ignore it?" "But it sounded real. That woman was terrified," Leon nodded. "It was real. Her world is falling apart and no one is going to help." The youngest officer, Darren, spoke quietly. "They wouldn't help us either, Commander. The Turvaks never showed kindness. Why should we?" Leon looked at him with calm eyes. "Because that's what makes us different. If we only act with hate, we become like them." The room went silent. Then Mira said softly, "So what are you planning to do?" Leon took a deep breath. "We still have the Starfire fleet stationed in orbit. 5 ships. We can reach Varnus Prime in less than 2 days at full speed." Darren's eyes widened. "That's against orders." "Yes," Leon said simply, "but it's the right thing to do." One by one, the crew exchanged glances. Finally, Mira nodded. "If you're going, Commander, then I'm going too." Others followed. They all knew what it meant, risking everything for strangers who once called them inferior. Yet none of them backed down. The next morning, before sunrise over Mars, the Starfire fleet detached from its orbit. 5 sleek human ships, Resolute, Pioneer, Horizon, Ardent, and Solaris, turned their engines toward the distant stars. The orange glow of Mars reflected off their hulls as they jumped into faster-than-light travel, leaving Earth space behind. No one spoke much during the journey. The crew felt the weight of what they were doing. But beneath that tension was something else. A quiet pride. Leon stood on the bridge, hands behind his back, watching the glowing tunnel of light as the ship sped through hyperspace. Mira approached him. "Do you think they'll even want our help, sir?" she asked softly. Leon smiled faintly. "I think they've learned humility. A plea like that doesn't come from pride." She nodded, then looked out at the light. "It's strange. Once we feared them. Now they're the ones in need." "History turns faster than we expect," Leon said. "Let's just hope we arrive in time." Meanwhile, on Varnus Prime, things were getting worse. The Turvak's forces had retreated to the last stronghold around the royal palace. The enemy coalition, made up of former subject races, had surrounded the capital entirely. Queen Ravari stood on the ruined balcony, her armor scratched, her voice hoarse from giving orders. The air smelled of smoke and metal. The once beautiful gardens below were now fields of ash. Her generals reported constant losses. The shield domes had fallen. The outer defenses were gone. Every hour, more cities went dark. She knew help was unlikely. The galaxy was vast, and her message had been a desperate hope more than a real plan. But still, every few minutes, she glanced at the old communication console, wishing for a reply that never came. Her guards noticed her quiet moments of hope, but none spoke of it. Even in defeat, they respected her too much. Then, far across the galaxy, the Starfire fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the Varnus system. The crew gasped. Before them stretched a nightmare. The planet was surrounded by hundreds of enemy ships, forming a blockade around the atmosphere. The surface glowed red from constant bombardment. "By the stars," Mira whispered. "They're destroying everything." Leon's face hardened. "We're late." But not too late. He opened a channel. "All ships prepare for silent approach. Keep your shields low and engines minimal. We need to slip past unnoticed." The human ships, smaller and faster than most alien vessels, began weaving between debris and wreckage. The crew held their breath as scanners picked up enemy patrols. They managed to reach the dark side of the planet undetected. There they hid behind a moon, scanning for life signals. Mira pointed at the screen. "Commander, I found it. Large concentration of heat signatures here." "That must be the capital fortress," Leon nodded. "Queen Rivari's last stand." He paused, then said, "Send a short burst message to the surface. Encryption level human standard. Phrase it simply." Mira typed quickly, her fingers shaking slightly. The message was short. "This is Commander Leon of the human fleet. We received your call." "Hold on, help is coming." She pressed send. The signal darted toward the planet like a whisper of light. Back in the fortress, the power was nearly gone. The room flickered with dim red light. Ravari sat on the cracked steps of her throne, eyes heavy. Around her, tired soldiers reloaded their weapons for what they knew would be the final battle. Then suddenly, a weak beep came from the communication console. One of the aides ran to check it. "My queen," he shouted. "We've received a signal." "It's not the enemy." Ravari stood up quickly, her heart pounding. "What does it say?" The aide looked at the small screen, disbelief on his face. "It's from humans." For a moment she didn't understand. Then slowly she walked toward the console and read the message herself. Her eyes widened. "We received your call. Hold on, help is coming." She read it twice, then a third time. The words were simple, but they carried a power she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Her soldiers gathered around, murmuring. Some didn't believe it, others smiled through tears. Ravari whispered softly, "Humans, the ones we once called weak." She looked toward the window where the sky burned with fire. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to hope. "They are coming," she said quietly, "and they will stand with us." Outside, the thunder of battle continued. But in that single moment, the light of human courage had already begun to cross the stars, and the fate of two civilizations was about to change forever. The night sky above Varnus Prime was no longer dark. It glowed red and orange from the endless fire of war. Whole cities burned like candles against the horizon. The enemy fleets hovered above the atmosphere, sending wave after wave of attack ships down toward the surface. Inside the royal fortress, the walls shook again. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the deep hum of enemy cannons rolled across the city. Queen Ravari stood near the main balcony, her armor dented, her cape torn, but her eyes alive again. She looked up at the dark heavens where human help might be coming. Her aide, Narek, ran up to her, his armor scorched from the last skirmish. "My queen, the enemies have broken through the outer wall. We cannot hold them much longer." Ravari turned to face him. Her voice was calm, steady. "We will hold as long as we can. If help truly comes, we must give them something to arrive to." Narek nodded, though his face showed doubt. The idea that humans, once servants to the Turvax, would risk their lives for them was still hard to believe. High above the planet, the Starfire fleet moved into formation. The 5 human ships floated behind a shattered moon, engines silent, scanners active. The view on their displays showed the enemy fleet, hundreds of massive alien warships, each larger and more heavily armed than any human vessel. Commander Leon stood in the center of the Resolute's bridge, surrounded by his officers. Mira, the ship's communications officer, spoke first. "Sir, we've confirmed Queen Ravari's position inside the capital fortress, but enemy forces completely surround it. If we enter directly, they'll detect us instantly." Leon studied the holographic map. Red lights filled the entire orbit. "We can't wait," he said. "If that fortress falls, there'll be no one left to save." His pilot, Darren, looked nervous. "Sir, their ships outnumber us 20-1. Leon gave a small smile. "Then we'll just have to make them think there are 100 of us. The crew exchanged glances, a mix of fear and determination. Everyone knew the odds, but no one turned away. Minutes later, the command came. All ships, engage stealth mode. Prepare for planetary descent. Engines flared blue as the small human fleet dove toward the planet's atmosphere. Flames streaked behind them as they cut through clouds filled with smoke and falling debris. Below, the city of Varna's capital looked like a broken jewel, shining lights buried under black ash. Enemy scanners are locking on, Mira shouted. Leon's voice was steady. Keep shields low. Divert power to decoys. Make them think we're debris. The ships twisted through the sky, dodging plasma fire from orbital cannons. Then, when they reached low altitude, Leon gave the command that would begin everything. Activate Thunder Protocol. At once, the lead ship, the Resolute, released a pulse beacon. The device exploded high above the battlefield, releasing a blinding flash of light and thousands of false sensor echoes. On the ground, alien commanders panicked. Their sensors suddenly showed hundreds of incoming ships. Confusion spread through their ranks. Leon's fleet used that moment to strike. Fire all railguns, he ordered. Blue streaks of energy shot from the ships, slicing through enemy lines. Massive dropships exploded mid-air. The coalition armies looked up, startled, as unknown vessels descended through the smoke. No one had expected humans. Inside the fortress, Ravari and her soldiers heard the distant thunder from above. The sky flashed with blue light, not enemy fire, but something else. Narek ran to the balcony. "My queen, look!" Ravari stepped forward. Through the clouds, she saw it. A formation of small silver ships descending rapidly, their trails glowing like falling stars. Her heart raced. "They came," she whispered. They actually came. The ground shook as the first human drop pods landed in the city below. The doors burst open and armored soldiers rushed out, their exosuits shining under the flames. They moved in perfect coordination, silent, quick, and precise. Their weapons fired bright blue arcs that tore through enemy armor. The alien attackers, unused to this kind of warfare, fell back in confusion. Ravari ordered her guards to open the fortress gates. As the humans advanced, a transmission came through the fortress channel. "This is Commander Leon of the human fleet," a calm voice said through the static. "Queen Ravari, hold your position. We are here." Her soldiers looked at her in shock. Ravari allowed herself a faint smile. "Answer them," she said. "Tell them Turvax stands with humanity today." The message was sent. On the surface, Leon's unit pushed forward, clearing the main street toward the fortress. His troops, trained in close combat, moved like shadows between burning buildings. The enemy tried to regroup, sending heavy tanks and gunships into the fray. But Leon's forces were quick, using drones and guided missiles to hit weak points. The sound of battle filled the air, explosions, shouting, and the constant hum of engines. Yet through all the chaos, the humans never broke formation. One enemy commander, a tall insect-like alien, watched in disbelief. "Humans, they dare enter this war?" "They are fools," he shouted. His second-in-command replied, "Fools or not, they're winning." The humans advanced street by street, freeing trapped Turvax soldiers and civilians. For the first time in years, the Queen's people saw hope, and it came from those they once enslaved. At last, Leon reached the outer courtyard of the fortress. The massive gates opened slowly, revealing Queen Ravari herself standing at the top of the stairs. Leon removed his helmet as he approached. His face was covered in soot and dust, but his eyes were calm. Ravari stared at him for a long moment. This was the first time she had ever seen a human leader up close. Not as a servant, not as an enemy, but as an equal. "You came," she said softly. Leon nodded. "We received your message. Couldn't just ignore it." Ravari's voice trembled slightly. "You risked everything for strangers who once treated your kind with cruelty." "Why?" Leon looked at her steadily. "Because that's what humans do. We don't leave people to die when we can help." Her soldiers, standing nearby, listened in silence. Many of them felt a sting of shame. The humans had shown more honor in a single act than their empire had in centuries. Ravari lowered her head slightly, a gesture of deep respect in Turvax culture. "Then you have my gratitude, Commander Leon of Earth," he smiled faintly. "Let's finish this together." The battle raged for hours. Human and Turvax forces fought side by side, defending the fortress from wave after wave of enemy troops. The sky turned black with smoke and fire, But the defenders refused to give up. Leon coordinated air support from the Starfire fleet, while Rivari led her soldiers on the ground. At one point, when an explosion brought down part of the fortress wall, Leon pushed Rivari out of the way, saving her life. She stared at him in shock. "You would risk yourself for me?" she asked. Leon grinned through the dust. "You're the only queen we've got right now." Despite the chaos, Rivari laughed, a sound she hadn't made in years. By nightfall, the enemy forces began to retreat. The human ships had broken their command structure, and the defenders had regained the capital. But victory came with a cost. The ground was covered in wreckage and fire. Many had fallen, human and Turvax alike. Rivari stood among the ruins, looking up at the stars now clearing of smoke. "How can I ever repay this?" she said quietly. Leon, standing beside her, looked at the horizon. "You can start by making sure this never happens again." She nodded slowly. "You have my word." Then she looked at him with new respect. "When I sent that message, I thought no one would hear. I thought we were alone." Leon smiled gently. "Humans don't like leaving people alone, Your Majesty. That's kind of our problem." For a moment, both stood in silence, watching the burning sky give way to dawn. Far above, the remaining human ships circled the planet, signaling victory. Across the galaxy, the story began to spread. That when the alien queen of Turvax cried for help, it was humans who answered. No one expected them to win. No one expected them to care. But they came anyway. And on that war-torn world, Queen Rivari finally understood why humanity was feared and respected by so many. Not for their power, but for their heart. The war was not yet over, but the galaxy had changed forever. The queen who once ruled through fear now looked to the stars with hope, because she knew that somewhere out there, humanity still watched, still cared, and still stood ready to fight for those who had no one else. The dawn over Varnus Prime brought a strange quiet. The smoke from the previous night still hung low over the city, but the human and Turvax forces had held the fortress. The enemy retreat was disorganized. Scattered ships fled toward the edge of space, leaving behind broken weapons and debris. Queen Rivari stood on the fortress balcony overlooking the battlefield. Her armor was scorched, her cape torn, but her eyes reflected a light she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Commander Leon approached her, his boots crunching on the broken stones. "We've secured the city for now," he said, "but the enemy will regroup. They'll try again." Rivari turned to him. "Then we prepare," she said. "But we will not face them alone this time. Humans and Turvax. Together." Leon nodded. "That's the way forward, but we need a plan. They're still strong and we are outnumbered." Inside the command hall, Leon's officers gathered around a holographic display. Blue dots represented human ships. Red dots marked the remaining enemy fleet. Mira tapped the display. "Their command ships are concentrating near the northern mountains. That's where they're planning a counterattack." Darren added, "They're trying to regroup their forces. If we hit them there, we could break their line once and for all." Leon looked at the hologram. "We will strike carefully. Human precision, Turvax courage. The two together can do what neither could alone." Rivari watched quietly. She had led her armies for centuries, relying on numbers and fear. But humans, even a small group, moved with a clarity, an instinct she could not understand. "They are extraordinary," she whispered to Narek. "Even compared to us, they are remarkable." Narek nodded slowly. "They fight not for conquest, but for each other." Rivari thought of that word. Each other. It was something her empire had long forgotten. The next hours were spent preparing. Turvax engineers repaired what defenses they could, while humans loaded their ships with weapons and drones. Civilians were moved to secure areas, and scouts were sent to track the enemy. Leon walked among the Turvax soldiers, giving quiet encouragement. "Hold your positions," he said. "We will break them." A young Turvax soldier, trembling with exhaustion, looked at him. "You risk yourself for us. Why?" Leon smiled faintly. "Because someone should. Today it's your turn to live." Rivari watched from the balcony, feeling a deep respect she had never shown any human before. Her empire had once crushed countless species. Now, Those very humans were standing with her, and willing to die for her people. By nightfall, the humans and Turvax were ready. The combined army moved toward the northern mountains where the enemy had regrouped. The first signs of the approaching coalition forces were faint lights on the horizon. Red glows of energy weapons and the hum of engines filled the sky. Leon raised his hand. Attack on my mark. Focus fire on command ships first. Turvax forces flank left and right. Civilian areas must remain untouched. Ravari led her soldiers forward, her staff glowing faintly with energy. They moved as a single unit, side by side with the humans. Soldiers who had once looked down on humans now fought alongside them as equals. The battlefield erupted into light and sound. The humans' precision strikes tore through enemy formations, while Turvax soldiers used their knowledge of the terrain to cut off reinforcements. Above the mountains, the human fleet engaged the remaining enemy ships. Leon piloted the Resolute at the front, dodging plasma fire and guiding his fleet through tight maneuvers. Mira called out, "Sir, the command ship is vulnerable. We can take it with coordinated fire." Leon nodded. All ships target the command vessel. Use synchronized volleys. In a dazzling display of light, human and Turvax fire struck simultaneously. The enemy flagship shuddered, then exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the mountains. On the ground, the enemy army faltered. Seeing their command destroyed, confusion spread quickly. Turvax and human soldiers pressed forward, capturing or forcing retreat. Ravari moved among her soldiers, offering encouragement. "We fight together. Show them that Turvax will not fall. When courage stands beside us." The human soldiers fought with the calm precision of their commander, covering Turvax flanks, clearing streets, and rescuing civilians. Hours passed, but the momentum never slowed. A massive tank approached the fortress gates. Turvax soldiers readied their energy weapons, but it was the humans who acted first. Using drones, they hacked the tank's controls and forced it to turn on its own forces. It crashed into the enemy line, creating chaos. Ravari watched in awe. "They are beyond anything I imagined," she said. "They fight like a storm, unstoppable, yet careful." Narek grinned. "Perhaps they are the strongest force in the galaxy, my queen." Ravari nodded slowly. "Strongest, yes, but not for power alone, for life, for loyalty, for honor. That is something we must learn from them." The enemy was finally in full retreat. Scattered ships fled into space. Remaining ground forces surrendered or hid. Leon's fleet returned to orbit, circling the planet as the Turvax celebrated their first major victory in months. Queen Ravari stood on the balcony of the fortress, looking at the humans who had saved her empire. She approached Leon as he landed. "Commander," she said quietly, "your actions have saved my people. You could have left us to die, and yet you risked everything." Leon shrugged. "We don't leave anyone behind, Your Majesty. It's what we do." Ravari studied him, her eyes thoughtful. "I do not know if my empire will ever truly repay this, but I swear, humanity will always have allies among the Turvax." Leon smiled faintly. "No need for repayment. Just promise that you will keep your people safe and learn from this. That is enough." The following days were spent rebuilding. The fortress was repaired, the city stabilized, and the surviving enemy forces had been either captured or expelled. Humans helped Turvax engineers restore power grids, medical teams treated the wounded, and soldiers trained together to prepare for any future threat. Ravari observed quietly. The actions of the humans had changed her perspective. Their courage, their loyalty, their willingness to act not for pride, but for life. It was something she had never seen in her own empire. For the first time, she saw a new way forward. Perhaps the galaxy could change if leaders like these humans existed. Then came the moment that defined the new alliance. The last of the enemy ships attempted one final attack. They had regrouped far away, planning a surprise strike at the fortress. Leon's fleet detected them immediately. "They think they can sneak past," he said. "They are wrong." In a brilliant maneuver, the human ships descended through the clouds, coordinating perfectly with Turvak's artillery. Energy beams sliced through enemy formations. Missiles struck with precision that no alien army could anticipate. The command ship of the enemy fleet was destroyed once and for all. The remaining vessels fled, their morale broken. Rivari watched, silent and amazed. "They are unstoppable when united," she whispered. Leon approached. "It's not just power. It's cooperation, strategy, and heart. That is what makes humans dangerous and trustworthy." Rivari nodded slowly. "Then we must carry this lesson to the rest of the galaxy." When the battle ended, the human and Turvak's forces gathered in the capital courtyard. Soldiers cheered, citizens clapped, and survivors wept with relief. Rivari stood before them all. Her voice rang clear and strong, filled with emotion. "Today we have been saved by humans, beings we once thought weak. They came when we were desperate, fought when we were surrounded, and stood with us when all hope seemed lost. Let this day be remembered not as a day of fear, but as a day of courage, unity, and honor." The crowd erupted in applause. The humans responded with calm acknowledgement, proud but humble. They had not fought for glory. They had fought for life. Leon stood beside Rivari, watching the scene. For centuries, the galaxy had seen Turvaks as rulers and humans as upstarts. Today, a new story was being written, one where courage and honor defined greatness, not domination. Rivari turned to Leon. "You have given us more than victory," she said softly. "You have given us hope. I will not forget this. Humanity has earned not only my gratitude, but my lasting respect." Leon smiled. "Then let's make sure everyone in the galaxy knows it. Together we can change more than one world." And for the first time in centuries, Turvak soldiers and civilians looked at humanity with awe, not as conquerors or slaves, but as saviors. The galaxy was beginning to see the truth, that when all seemed lost, humans would answer. And when humans answered, the impossible became reality. The sky over Varnus Prime was calm for the first time in years. Smoke and fire still lingered over the city, but the massive fleets of the enemy had been driven away. For now the war was over. Queen Rivari stood on the balcony of her restored fortress. She looked out over her city, broken, yes, but alive. Civilians walked through the streets. Children played among the ruins, and her soldiers tended to the wounded. The city was not whole, but it was breathing again. Beside her, Commander Leon watched as Turvaks and human forces coordinated the final cleanup. Though the humans had already done so much, they had stayed, helping repair defenses, restoring order, and teaching Turvak soldiers tactics they had never imagined. Rivari turned to him. Her eyes were thoughtful, her pride tempered by gratitude. "Leon, you risked everything for a people who once looked down on yours. I expected arrogance or mockery, but you acted with courage and honor." Leon shook his head. "We don't fight for glory, Your Majesty. We fight for life. That's what makes humans human." She studied him for a moment. "And yet, I have learned from you. My people have learned from you. Perhaps this empire can change. If we remember today." Inside the fortress, soldiers of the Turvak's dominion gathered in the central hall. They were tired, wounded, and some were silent with disbelief. They had seen the humans fight. Precise, brave, unwavering. And they had done it for them, for Turvaks, for a species they had once scorned. Rivari raised her voice and the room fell silent. "Today humanity showed us what courage truly is. Not by strength, not by numbers, but by honor, loyalty, and compassion. Let their actions serve as a lesson to us all. We will rebuild, and we will not forget who stood with us when hope was gone." Soldiers and civilians alike bowed their heads. For many, it was the first time in centuries that a Turvak's leader had praised another species so openly. Outside, the humans worked tirelessly alongside Turvak's engineers and soldiers. Commander Leon moved through the streets, checking on each unit. Mira was coordinating supply drops while Darren supervised clearing debris from the main roads. A small group of children approached Leon, carrying handmade signs with Turvak symbols painted on them. One child stepped forward and said, "You saved us. We will never forget humans." Leon knelt to meet the child's eyes. "We didn't do it for thanks. We did it because someone had to. But I hope you remember courage and that you help others when they need it." The child nodded solemnly, then ran back to join the others. Leon stood and looked toward the fortress. Queen Rivari was still on the balcony, watching the city with quiet pride. That evening, a council was held in the fortress. Rivari invited Leon and his senior officers to sit at the central table. The walls were lined with maps showing regions of the Turvax Dominion, their fleets, and future strategic positions. "This war has ended," Rivari began, "but the galaxy is vast and dangerous. Humans, I ask for your guidance and cooperation not as conquerors but as allies." Leon inclined his head. "We will help where we can. But the first step is trust. Your people must learn that we act not for dominance but for life." Rivari nodded. "Then let today mark a new beginning. A Turvax Dominion that sees the value of others. A Turvax Dominion that honors courage and compassion above conquest." She turned to her generals. "We will send envoys to the remaining sectors. We will offer peace where possible, and defend only where necessary. Our alliance with humanity will be known across the stars." Over the following weeks, humanity's presence on Varnus Prime became a symbol of hope. Schools, medical stations, and repair facilities were established. Humans trained Turvax soldiers, teaching them strategy, defense, and cooperation. Rivari walked among her people frequently, listening to their stories, sharing her own lessons. She realized that humans had given her more than military assistance. They had restored something her empire had lost: the belief in honor, courage, and hope. One afternoon, she met Commander Leon on the palace balcony, overlooking the restored city. "You have changed my empire," she said quietly. "Not through force, but through your actions. I never imagined I would bow to a human leader, but I do with respect." Leon smiled. "No need for titles, Your Majesty. We did what any species should do, help those in need." Rivari nodded. "And yet your courage will echo in Turvax history. Today humans have earned a place not as subordinates but as equals, as friends, as saviors." Leon looked out at the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the sky in gold and violet. "We didn't do it for glory," he said, "but it's nice to see it recognized." In the city below, Turvax citizens began rebuilding their homes. Children played where rubble had once lain, laughter replacing the screams and cries of battle. Soldiers repaired walls and bridges, inspired by the humans who worked alongside them. Rivari walked among them, her heart swelling with pride. The war had shown her the cost of arrogance and the value of courage. The Turvax could rebuild not just their cities but their character. Later, she gathered her council in the main hall. "We owe humanity more than we can ever repay, but we will honor them in every action we take. No longer will we look down on others, for today we learned that courage and loyalty can come from anyone, anywhere." Narek, standing beside her, whispered, "Your people are fortunate, my queen. Humans are rare, even among the stars." Rivari smiled softly. "Yes, Narek. Today we are fortunate indeed." Word of the human intervention spread throughout the galaxy. Other species watched, amazed. The once feared Turvax Empire had been saved, not by themselves, not by their former allies, but by humans. Stories were told of the Starfire fleet, the bravery of Commander Leon, and the precision and courage of every human soldier who had stood beside the Turvax. Across trade routes, military channels, and distant colonies, whispers spread. Humans answer when others cannot, and when they answer, the impossible becomes possible. Rivari received messages from former allies and neutral systems. She sent back her own message: "We will honor humanity in all our actions. Their courage has saved us, and their example will guide our empire forward." Months later, Varnus Prime was fully restored. Trade resumed, schools opened, and people returned to normal life. Turvax soldiers and humans continued training together, preparing for any threats that might emerge. Rivari stood on the highest tower of her palace one morning, looking out at the sunrise. The city below buzzed with life. Children laughed, merchants shouted greetings, and soldiers marched with purpose. Leon approached her quietly. "It's beautiful," he said. Rivari nodded. "Yes, and it is proof that courage, compassion, and cooperation can overcome even the darkest hours." Leon smiled faintly. "Then our work here is done. For now." Rivari looked at him, a serious expression on her face. "No, Commander. Our work has just begun. Together, We will ensure that the galaxy remembers this lesson, that when humanity chooses to act, they do so not for power, but for honor and life itself. Leon nodded. Then let's make sure it spreads. The final ceremony was held in the central courtyard of the palace. Queen Rivari addressed both her people and the humans who had saved them. Today we honor not only our survival, but the courage of humanity, she declared. Their arrival turned despair into hope, fear into strength, and darkness into light. Let it be known across the galaxy that humans are not merely warriors. They are protectors, saviors, and friends. We will never forget this day. The crowd erupted in applause. Human soldiers raised their helmets in salute, while Turvax citizens bowed deeply, gratitude shining in their eyes. Rivari approached Commander Leon and offered a traditional bow, an act of the highest respect in Turvax culture. Leon, she said, I vow that humanity will always have allies among the Turvax. Today you have my gratitude, my respect, and my pledge. Leon returned the bow, his voice calm but firm. Then we stand together, always. From that day forward, humanity and the Turvax Dominion became allies. Stories of courage and honor spread across the stars. Queen Rivari led her people with new wisdom, guided not by pride but by the example of those who had saved them. And humanity. Humanity continued to answer the calls of those in need, proving that courage, loyalty, and compassion could shine even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. The stars would remember this day. And so would the galaxy, because when humans arrive to help, hope is never lost. The end.